In terms of school safety in our county, is that the responsibility of the city that the schools are in, or would it fall into any help or support from the crisis centers if there was an emergency?
So school safety and the crisis centers are sort of separate entities and certainly separate fundings. And I'll let these guys talk about school safety officers because they have the more accurate data. Part of what the recovery center is looking at right now for increasing funding is to make sure, they have a great presence here in downtown Moscow. People know that door, it's no longer wheat berries, they walk through that door, they know what type of services they're gonna get, and it's got good reputation, and everybody knows about it here in Moscow. College needs a similar storefront, and so does Troy, and so does Gary, and so does Kendra Julia, and so part of what they're trying to do is take that peer-based counseling, because that's what it is, it's by far the most economical way to provide some sort of mental health services. They're hoping to get those outreach, just like we have backyard harvest now in like a lot of the different smaller communities. We're trying to get that recovery center presence in all of the outlying communities as well. But go ahead, Fred, the school safety.
School safety also last year, we put back into the sheriff's budget money for a school resource officer. Moscow, I'm sure you go by the school here, there's almost always a police officer here. There's one deputy or one police officer that just hangs out at Moscow High and Moscow Junior High and the elementary schools. Lake Ritchie now has, Lake Tahoe Sheriff now has one officer, and that's their responsibility. He'll spend one morning in Potlatch High School, and then the next morning he'll be at Kendrick High School, the next morning he'll be at Deary High School. It's called the Lake Tahoe County School Resource Officer. His job is to go in and visit with the kids and get the kids to know him. Super nice guy, really, Ron, officer, he's a Baker. So anyway, I think that's gone a long ways to make kids trust police officers and law enforcement. I think that's gone a long way.
He's also showing up to the various city council meetings throughout Lake Tahoe County. So he gets to, that's nice because then he's starting to see, getting to know the parents, and he, start to make these links that way. So there's, and then we want to make sure that the two SROs, Moscow and Lake Tahoe, are also communicating really well with what the former Lake Tahoe County Youth Advocacy Council and our youth probation officers, and so we're trying to make sure that the folks that are working with youth throughout Lake Tahoe County are, making sure they're at least having coffee together and talking and sharing things and gathering information with each other.
First off, thank you for the money to help with the McConnell roof.
Oh,
It's badly.
the city was in on that one too.
So thank you.
Yeah.
My question is, since some of these things, such as you just mentioned, and the Veterans Affairs Officer, and some other stuff are already with the county, has the county considered putting together some kind of a clearinghouse? Because we have, 6 or 8 food banks in the county. We have the resource center. We have church groups. We have other groups who are doing things, but they have some piece of the puzzle. And it would be so good if somebody like the county, who's already kind of they're in ankle deep, would get in knee deep and put together or help coordinate some sort of one-stop shopping.
That's Henry Ann Westbrook, she takes care of it.
So the social services.
I'm greedy, so.
Yeah, so the social services piece falls under
Yes.
Henry Ann Westberg, the clerk, and
Yes.
so, she might want to add to that.
No, I'm talking to my county.
I know you are.
And
And I'm not trying to avoid that, it's a weird, so a county government is shaped differently
I know.
than a city government, and so we are also. What's
You're
that?
not the mayor?
No, and so I'm always, to go to your point of making sure that there's communication between the
Yeah.
different entities, we have monthly an elected official department head meeting where all the different leaders within Lake Tahoe County meet, and it's not just the 3 of us. There are a bunch of people that head up departments, that head up offices, that are elected, that respond directly to you as well, and we communicate with each other about all these different pieces. And so, I love that idea. Maybe we need to do more along those lines. Yeah, Nancy. Sorry, go ahead.
Several years ago, the city and county had conversations about about a joint law enforcement facility, and now the city has proposed a bond election for a new police station. I wonder if those conversations were ever revived, especially in the context of your need for a new jail at some time in the next decade.
There have not been new conversations, overtly. I think people question that, and that question's come up quite a few times. It came up, 2 weeks ago, when the chamber lunch was out here, and we had the sheriff's office and the police department talking about different things, and they said, oh no, we're not talking about that. I suspect it probably needs to be talked about, because it gets asked so many times that the community is clearly hungry for that conversation, and I would recommend to the city that it happen at some level, so that we can at least answer that question to all the voters, because people keep asking that question, and I think it needs to be addressed so that people feel comfortable about the answer before they go and vote. I don't know what the answer is. Personally, I don't know what exactly this thing should look like, but I think there needs to be a conversation so that we can get to that answer. And I don't think it's one person that's going to know what the answer is. It's complicated, of course, because a sheriff is brought to power in a different way than a police chief is brought to power. And a sheriff is constitutionally mandated, a police chief is legally allowed. They're different, as you know, I mean, they're just different roles, and we need to, if there's a problem with how a sheriff manages a building and how a police chief manages a building, and they're stuck in the same building, there needs to be some pathway to figure out how all of that is managed. And I think that's usually the number one reason why people say, oh, it can't possibly work. All of this is expensive, as you know, of course. And I think I'm in this unique opportunity or perspective on this particular issue that when I was a city council member and we were meeting to have a conversation between the city of Moscow and Latah County, when the county commissioners walked in and they said, we're done, we're not talking about this joint law enforcement agency or joint law enforcement entity any longer, I was on the other side of the issue, right? I was a city council member. I don't think anybody else was in those two different roles. So for me, I'm open to the conversation, but it's gonna need to happen first. And the bond is not being driven by, I'm not on the city anymore, I'm with the county. But I think there needs to be some conversation. So, who was, LT.
Hi, so I've had an op-ed piece in Moscow Pullman Daily News last Friday, and so I'm here to try to rally up the troops to see what it is that I can do to facilitate discussions about how to be better prepared and coordinated in case there's community emergency and mass relocation of low-income residents in our community. And so I'm just here to tell you I'm here and to find and learn from you what would be an effective strategy for me to try to bring some heads together, because one of my imaginings is to bring Syringa Mobile Home Park residents into at least some of the initial discussions, because there's a lot of literature and legal analysis that says when people lose property as they have, that it's really important to not only take their dignity, but give them an avenue for restoring some of that dignity back. So, so I'm hoping to do something like that where we're listening to them in terms of what can we do in the future versus what are the complaints, you know. So I'm trying to channel this into something that helps us envision how this could have been coordinated a little better and make a game plan that at least thinks about the different things that we had to try to piece together in the midst of an emergency. So I'm just seeking some idea of how committed all three of you are
We probably
to
all have
helping
opinions
out with
Dave's
this.
gonna start
Dave, you did a great, both you and Tom did a great job moving on those days too.
Thank you very much.
I'm excited about the combination of people that we have now representing us.
And it was more than just what happened the last few months, I mean, it was.
Oh, yeah,
it's
I
10
mean, this
years.
is something that's been going on for years.
It has been years, and that whole Syringa thing was, I hope in the end, we can look at that and say, well, I hope there was some lessons learned. How it could be handled better. In the end, you know, it actually worked out pretty good. We started out 3 years ago with 350 residents there. We started red tagging those trailers not to shut it down, but because of the public safety issue. The byproduct of the red tags is the population dwindled and dwindled and dwindled. I hope, you know, that your efforts of Brian, pointed that the list is endless of how many people, Tom and I, how many thousands of gallons of water?
A lot of water,
And
and a lot of snow.
in a lot of snow. But I mean, all I can say, I guess, to that is I hope we can look at that, if there's some group or some organization or some, how to shut down a book somebody can write, or a user's manual or an owner's manual, that we can write and say, oh, go to page 22 and it'll tell you what to do here and right here. I hope that's one of the lessons learned out of this whole thing is to have a better idea of how to handle this stuff.
Well, is this something that you can support though too? Because you have the ability to see how the larger community, you know, which is, because these folks ended up moving all over the county, you know, and it wasn't just City of Moscow, although I do want City of Moscow involved, but
So, and
we really need government leaders to be part of helping people like me understand how do you view these things and how do we coordinate even the departments within county and city so that we have that blueprint of like, okay, these are the kinds of issues that, especially for mobile home park living,
Yeah.
so
you know, the complications of trying to find people who were registered movers, oh my goodness, you know. That, you know, if there could be at least a little bit more of a, we need to be prepared to have a list of registered movers who are not going to move a home and then just leave it there for this impoverished person to try to figure out how to make habitable, you know.
So as you know, there are huge gaps between what the state law allows and
Yep.
what counties can do and what cities can do.
Yeah.
So we were stuck with this, in this weird legal place that the state allows private, you know, mobile home courts to just, and have a private water system and all this kind of stuff. It allows all this to take place, and there's not really, they don't have in state law an ability to do good control like they should be doing, and they don't hand it over to the counties to do it either, so it's a mess.
Mhm.
And so that's how we got here, and then you combine that with a private landowner, the Magar, who chooses to not reinvest money into the place over 30 years, and then that's what you get.
Yeah.
And it was horrible for everybody involved.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about the fact that the relocation
move.
eventually
Yeah.
took place, right?
Understood,
That's-
understood, and the
yeah.
problem also is that as the county, we don't even have the ability to use public funds to,
Private purpose.
for a private purpose, right? So it's a private landowner, we can't subsidize a private business, which is essentially what the mobile home court is. And despite the fact that that people are involved and are trying to move out and trying to be, and there were a lot of public resources used to help. I mean, the sheriff spends almost, I don't know how much of, what percentage of his time,
Oh, like
A
I
lot.
said-
but
Yeah.
he has, that sheriff
We
has
met
the
with him
biggest
many
heart.
times out there, so.
Yeah,
Um,
and I mean, we spend, there's a bunch, and churches, but there are these big gaps, and and as you know, a lot of people went to go help out, and BJ bought sandwiches for everybody, and you know, there were a lot of
Yeah.
things, Layton Sanitation.
But as I pointed out in the letter, it wasn't coordinated, right?
No.
And
No,
that's the
it's
kind
not.
of thing that we can't rely on
Right.
the charity of individuals or me that's facilitating between household conversations
And even the government.
talking with
I mean,
Steve
there's-
Bonner. But you know, the government is supposed to be at least something prepared to coordinate action, right? That's all I'm asking about, is not
Right.
funding people moving, that, you know, although an emergency fund would be nice, but it's mainly the heads, right? The expertise and knowledge and networks that you all have to have a game plan of action.
Just a
Yeah.
second.
Can we afford